I think people say, why can't we cure cancer? Well, we've cured a lot of cancers, right? There are some cancers where you take a drug and it goes away. Or some cancers, melanoma, if it's small enough, we can cut it out, that you're cured. There are some cancers that we're really bad at. There are some cancers we're very good at treating. We can actually cure. There are a lot of patients that are survivors that never develop cancer again for the rest of their life. We're trying to access those biomarkers and we're trying to annotate those biomarkers as effectively as possible so that we can dictate what is the best treatment that could be curative for those individuals.
All right. I wanted to say thanks again, Erica, for joining us today. You have such a cool story and an exciting kind of future in the business. So I wanted to give you a chance to kind of tell the listeners what it is that you guys do.
Absolutely. So my name is Erica Barnell. I recently graduated as an MD PhD from WashU here in St. Louis. And during my education, I co-founded and I'm currently the chief science operator or chief science officer at Geneoscopy, which is a healthcare startup company that's looking at innovative solutions to monitor, diagnose, and treat gastrointestinal disease.
What is it that drove you to say, I would definitely want to do biology and go into med school as a child? When did you know you wanted to do that?
Yeah, I think there's really two types of individuals that I've discovered in medical school. There's that person that knew they wanted to be a doctor since they were 5 years old. And those people are just so passionate about healthcare and caring for patients, which is amazing. And then there's another cohort of people that I fell into, which is somebody who just really liked science and exploring and had curiosity for observations. So I always was interested in science. Every science class I took, I enjoyed. And one of my mentors recommended that I take the MCAT and apply to medical school. So I did, and I kind of took a leap and ended up back in my hometown in St. Louis, which was wonderful, and completing those dual medical degrees.
So I always find it, excuse me, I always find it interesting that it's oftentimes people in our lives that can point us in a direction. What was the plans to do with biology outside of medical school? What did you actually think you were going to do after school?
Yeah, my whole family is kind of entrepreneurial in spirit. My grandfather started a company when he was in his 30s. My father started a company when he was in his 30s. I thought I'd be a little bit more ambitious and start a company when I was in my 20s.
You just wanted to show them up.
Yeah, show them up. So I feel like I've always seen that in my family and seen the startup lifestyle. And I have really great people in my family that I can turn to try to understand, how to build a business and how to build a company. So I think I had that in place. And then again, just my aptitude for science, combining those two worlds seemed very natural for me.
Because you didn't even give yourself time to go down the actual practicing medicine route. You essentially just did this right out of school, right?
I did. And I think, I wasn't an individual who wanted to be a doctor since I was 5. I think I just enjoyed science. Fortunately, I have a number of peers that chose the physician route, who I think are much more talented than myself at taking care of people and understanding wellness. So I'm grateful for the physicians in my life and in the world. But yeah, I definitely chose differently. I think what I thrive in doing is kind of working between the bench and the bedside. So trying to understand the problems that are happening in healthcare, which is a $2 trillion industry and everything's broken, right?
Right.
And then going back to the bench and trying to discover ways to improve the lives of individuals that I meet in the hospital.
So were you looking for an opportunity or a problem to solve, or was it something that kind of you just identified doing your rotations or something like that? How did it come about that you said, oh, here's an idea and I'm gonna solve this problem?
Absolutely. So I have been conducting a lot of research as an undergraduate at WashU, where we were looking at diagnosing environmental enteropathy for children in Africa. So these individuals are exposed to a lot of pathogens in their natural homes, and it results in growth faltering for kids under the age of 5. So that was kind of the research that I'd been conducting at the time. And we were really successful at taking diapers or stool samples from babies and dictating which individuals had this disease and providing intervention to prevent growth faltering. So I was conducting this research at the same time that I matriculated to the MD PhD program. And when I was on my oncology rotation, my GI rotation, I met an individual who had presented to the hospital with stage 4 colorectal cancer, and she was quite young. And I asked her, why didn't you get a colonoscopy? We have ways to kind of, catch this earlier. And she said that she didn't have time to take off work to get a colonoscopy, and she had kids and busy like everybody else, just taking care of other people and instead of herself. And I thought, we have really wonderful ways, amazing ways to provide solutions to individuals like this woman where, we don't have to get a colonoscopy unless we need one. So I thought, why don't I combine this research that I've been doing to look at non-invasive solutions to evaluate the gastrointestinal status and apply it to colorectal cancer or IBD or IBS. And so that was the foundation for the company. It was kind of joining that research and that exposure I had as a medical student.
I don't know if this is proprietary information, but what is it about a stool sample that can tell you what somebody has?
Yeah, so everybody poops. That is a book I read when I was about 3 years old. And what happens is not only are you eliminating waste, but there are cells that are being sloughed from the lining of your small and large intestine. And those cells are coming from the lumen of the colon and the bowel. And so what we do is we preferentially pull out those cells that are being sloughed into the stool, and we lyse them open, we open them up, and we look at what's happening at the RNA level. And that can tell us what your gut is doing. And it kind of provides a non-invasive biopsy of the GI tract to indicate if there's disease, inflammation, or problems that we might be able to rectify.
So is it only like intestinal issues that you can identify, or are there other things that you can tell just from looking at that?
The focus today has been on GI health and trying to understand in the oncology space, colorectal cancer and diagnosing colorectal cancer. In the inflammatory space, trying to predict therapeutic response for IBD, which is Crohn's and ulcerative colitis. But I think there are applications beyond the GI disease or indications that we could eventually look at. I think your GI tract, your microbiome is really connected to kind of your health as a whole. And so I think there are other things beyond what we're currently looking at, but I'm going for the low-hanging fruit right now.
Well, but it's a large cohort of people too that are impacted by those diseases.
You'd be shocked. I unfortunately, after a lot of talks that I have a number of people coming up to me saying, my loved one was diagnosed with colorectal cancer at 30 something years old. It's just, again, devastating to me because, we can't give colonoscopies to everybody. It's not going to be a viable solution. So hopefully we can give non-invasive tests to those individuals that are high risk.
And I want to make sure I'm saying the business name right. Geneoscopy or
Geneoscopy.
Geneoscopy.
Yes.
All right. So with the business, is it just providing that the testing of that sample? Like, how does someone approach you guys to actually get that done? Like, what is the business model?
Yeah, so currently we have one test that is undergoing or is pending FDA approval. So that test is a colorectal cancer screening assay for individuals over the age of 45. So once that test is approved, which will hopefully be by the end of this year, any individual over the age of 45 that's eligible for average risk colorectal cancer screening would be able to get one of our tests. So you go to your physician, you say, I want a non-invasive test. I don't want to do a colonoscopy, if that's your choice. And then your doctor would prescribe one of our diagnostic tests. That script would go to our offices. We would drop ship a kit to your home. And in the comfort of your own home, you provide a stool sample, push a button on your phone, FedEx comes and picks it up, and then we'll analyze that sample and provide a result to your physician if we think you need a colonoscopy to have lesions removed, or if we think that you are fine and can go about your business for the next 3 years.
So that's kind of amazing. Is it, but I guess at least temporarily, um, you like you said, it's over 45, you'll need a prescription to get it. But what's the long-term goal of that? Like, is it that anybody will just be able to go to their pharmacy and just pick one up? Like how broad of a base are you guys going for?
So right now, the kind of paradigm of colorectal cancer screening is once you turn 45, the GI community recommends that you get a colonoscopy. So our solution is, instead of a colonoscopy, if that's something that doesn't fit within your lifestyle, or your work schedule, or whatever, we can provide that non-invasive test, which would indicate if you would need a colonoscopy or not. So it's kind of the solution we're providing is colorectal cancer screening for these individuals that otherwise wouldn't be getting colorectal cancer screening through a colonoscopy. To date, we don't have a colorectal cancer screening test that is over the counter. But ultimately, some of our solutions, our diagnostic tests for other diseases or other indications like IBD, might be able to be done over the counter or not through a prescription method.
Is this like new technology, or is it something that you're just applying to this space? Because it seems like so obvious, right? Like it's like, why, if I could do this and not have someone have to go through the colonoscopy, why has this not happened before?
So there is one other test out there that looks at, molecular testing and stool samples. So that there are other tests out there. I think the value that we have is we look at RNA instead of DNA. So that is kind of, in my mind, the innovation that we've created for this indication. So because we're looking at RNA, it's a downstream molecular signature that is more sensitive for disease. So the novel biomarkers that we use create an improved solution to detect disease and increase the accuracy for our tests and for our patients.
You don't have to give a whole lesson here, but when you say looking at RNA instead of DNA for non-medical professionals like myself, what does that mean?
Yeah, so there's different ways in which you can detect disease. When you have a lesion or a polyp, the DNA will change, and that's what causes the polyp to develop. When the DNA changes, the downstream effects are observed in the RNA or in the transcriptome, and those signals are amplified exponentially. And what you could think about is, if there's a little change in a machine, then it starts to go crazy and go awry. So we're detecting that the RNA changes that are exponentially amplified, that are downstream of the DNA mutations.
That explains that. Thank you for that, for the lay terms explanation of it.
Yeah,
I want to take a step back and think about, I want to go back to the business side of it,
absolutely.
because you guys are unique too, I think, in that you did this with your brother, right? Like you talked about having an entrepreneurial family, but you actually founded this business with your brother.
I did. I think I was going through the MD PhD program at the time that I thought about coming up with the company. And my brother, Andrew, he was completing his MBA from Wharton as a healthcare graduate in the healthcare program. So it kind of made sense that I was going to him and asking for financial models and budgets and pro forma statements so that I could kind of start thinking about pitching to investors. And eventually he just said, let's do this together. So we joined forces, and him running on the business side and me on the science side created a really comprehensive approach for building the company.
How's that been for you guys? Like, I just come from the family business world, so I know what that can be like.
Yeah. He's my best friend. He's been my
Awesome.
best friend since I was 10 years old. Can't speak to before that, but we went to high school together 2 years apart. I followed him to Cornell, again 2 years apart. And we've done a lot together. He moved back to St. Louis after he graduated when we founded the company, and I don't think we've lived more than a block apart since then. So
Wow.
he's really just been a huge help and support. And I don't think I could have done this. I know I couldn't have done this without him, for sure.
No, that's awesome. So what are the biggest challenges? And when did you guys start? How many years have you been doing this now?
2016.
Okay.
So
So I mean, has it been trying to raise the money? Is it building the team? What's been the hardest part for you guys?
Yeah, startup life is just constantly pushing on all fronts. I'd say, we are often reprioritizing what front is the most important. So, fundraising is certainly one of them. Pushing the product through the product development lifecycle is one of them. Filing patents to protect the technology is one of them. Building our key opinion leaders or building our scientific advisory board has been one of them. And then a big one that I personally think is one of the most important is building our team. We have a world-class team that makes this possible. It's the bloodline of our company, and everybody that works for us brings just so much value to the company. And I really feel fortunate that we're surrounded by really amazing, talented people that can advance our mission.
Well, that's the thing too. You guys have such a cool mission that people can get behind. But what's it been like to try and find the people, right? Because there's still risk in joining a startup, right? So what is the pitch to get people on board?
I just tell them you get to work with poop and
Okay.
it's going to be great. No, I think that like you're describing, there's so many people that have been impacted by cancer, by GI disease, by, the healthcare system as a general statement, where, people want to be a part of the mission that we have. People want to be a part of building solutions for patients. And I think that's been really great.
I just like to highlight the fact that the reason I kept asking about it is, every entrepreneur goes through those challenges, right? And so it's good to see that even people that go to Cornell and can go through med school and get a PhD and go through Wharton have the same struggles that everyone else does.
I mean, entrepreneurship is not for the weak of heart. There's a lot of volatility, and yeah, one day you think your company is worth millions of dollars, and the next day you're thinking about just cutting your losses.
At least
But
your fallback plan would be okay, right?
that's true. I can fall back on my medical degree for sure.
Um, are there other areas of like healthcare that you guys or your technology can have an impact on? Like, is it limited to kind of what we were talking about before, or is there room for advancement?
Yeah, I think, in terms of our assays, there's so much room, so much white space where we haven't explored. I think RNA is a new field where we're just learning how to stabilize it well in a way that we can look at biomarkers of interest. So I think there's a lot of innovation we can do on biomarker discovery front. But another passion of mine is public health.
Mm.
And especially for colorectal cancer, I think, you know, cancer disproportionately afflicts individuals that are minorities, individuals that have low socioeconomic status. And I think the solution that we want to provide is specifically for those individuals, for people that can't take time off work or they're going to get fired, people that don't have great health insurance and can't afford a $3,000 colonoscopy procedure. So I think we're trying to build solutions that directly impact people that are a little bit lost in the healthcare system for no other reason than race or where they were born or who their parents are, which I think is a horrible shame in this country.
When I've seen that, you guys have been, even recently, like, part of like some White House events talking about the public health space and cancer. And what do the changes look like? Is it literally, I mean, it's not that that's a small thing providing, detection to low socioeconomic people, but are there other things, or what part of the system, I guess, is what needs addressed most?
Yeah, I think, we don't want to just provide a test to a patient and then give them a result and say, thank you for your time. I think we're trying to create a comprehensive screening solution for individuals. So end to end, we are communicating with our patients. We are telling them how to get the kit back to our facility. What does the result mean? If it's a positive result, we try to reduce barriers to help them get that subsequent procedure to get the colonoscopy. So, if that means providing them with ride share to a GI's office, if that means trying to get a gastroenterologist to provide a pro bono colonoscopy, if that means, providing the prep for free, there's a lot of barriers that we can look at and eliminate to help people go from I need colorectal cancer screening to the final solution, which is I have a lesion, I need it removed. We're trying to implement that entire navigation system for our patients.
That's awesome. Is there with that RNA biomarker, is that only found in like the intestine, or is it found otherwhere in the elsewhere in the body?
RNA is everywhere.
Okay.
So all of your cells have two strands of DNA, and that's kind of like the cookbook. And then the instructions is the RNA. So the ingredients are the RNA. And so every cell, again, two DNA, massive amounts of RNA. And I think that's what we're leveraging to try to understand disease.
So that's why, like in theory, if I'm understanding this, that assay could test like anywhere if you could get that sample from anywhere in the body to find other types of markers for whether it be
Yeah.
inflammation or cancer.
So we've thought about, there's other companies that are looking at blood. There's other companies that are looking at urine, saliva, a lot of modalities. I think, again, we've tried to focus on gastrointestinal health because that's just where my research came from. And I think it's been difficult to look at RNA biomarkers in stool samples because it's notoriously difficult to preserve. But, yes, of course, we could definitely go to different sample types for sure.
And can you tell specifically what it is that's creating the I don't even know that marker, like it's a, hey, this is a polyp, this is cancer, this is just inflammation. Like, are there different markers that you can actually tell?
Yeah. So, cancer, I always call colorectal cancer, the most preventable but least prevented cancer that we have, right? It starts as a normal tissue, normal gut tissue, and as the cells turn over, it starts accumulating the DNA changes that causes problems, and then it starts to develop a really small polyp, and then the polyp gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and eventually it accumulates enough mutations where it has a malignant transformation, and that's when it becomes cancer. And that process can take 10 years to go from normal mucosa to cancer. And that gives us a really broad opportunity to investigate the individual and say, okay, are the cells that are being sloughed into the colon, do they look like a polyp? Do they look big? Do they look like a cancer? Do they look big? Do they look bad and scary? And so the markers that we are looking at follow that same path where we can detect normal mucosa, we can detect a small lesion with a low level of sensitivity. And as the lesion gets bigger, more malignant, there's a higher probability that our test is going to come back positive.
What I guess, why is it that, you made a comment earlier that, these these things have been identified in people like getting younger, like, and people in their 20s can be impacted with like IBD and things like that. So how is that a change historically, or is that because of like our diet, or why do you think it is that younger people are because it used to be like after 50 they told you to get a colonoscopy, but now that's changing. Like, why is it that it's happening younger and younger?
Yeah, they haven't quite pinned down exactly what it is that's causing an increase in the incidence of colorectal cancer in younger patient populations. So, like you're describing, the incidence of disease for individuals under 50 was very low as of 20 years ago. That incidence has doubled in the
Hmm.
last 30 years, which means that, if you're 30 to 50, the probability that you're going to get colorectal cancer is twice that of what your parents' probability was when they were your age. So, what we're trying to do, again, we can't scope everybody over the age of 15. What we're trying to do is identify individuals that are higher risk, individuals that maybe have some symptoms, maybe individuals that have a family history, and those individuals might be eligible for our test. And then subsequently, if our test is positive, that means they're, again, of a higher risk, and we would like to send those patients to colonoscopy.
Is the access to your guys' test, is it just going to be through like physician education? Like, more people are going to have to know about you all and know that that's available, right?
Yeah, and I think the field is moving in that direction. I think people are much more accountable for their health today than they've ever been. Fortunately, we have a lot more resource or access to resource so people can kind of understand what their options are. And even as a medical student, I see patients coming in asking for certain things or asking for advice about a couple of different options that fit with their needs rather than asking for a full-blown plan for them. So, and I think that's great that people are taking ownership over their healthcare, and coming to, people that have gone through medical school for advice rather than for a plan. So, because of that, I think people are aware of non-invasive testing for colorectal cancer. We'll continue to educate the community, continue to educate providers, but I think patients are becoming a lot better at taking ownership of that.
So you can just educate the general population because they can be their own advocate and ask for the test.
Yeah, and I think,
Ask.
yeah, you've probably seen a lot of the commercials. There's Cologuard commercials that are out there, and people kind of know them, and they've spent a lot on marketing towards patients as well. So fortunately, it's becoming a part of the field, is what I will say.
Whenever you talk about like the end-to-end education with patients, are there things that, beyond just identifying, like testing, identifying that they have an issue? Are there other like guidance that you guys provide? In my head, I'm thinking about like whether it just be dietary changes or something like that. Because obviously it's gonna be difficult for you to treat everyone in the country too. What are the things that you talk to people about whenever it's like, hey, we have this option for you. Now we'll make sure you get that option. Now we've identified the markers for you. So like, what's the whole education process look like?
Yeah, I think for the colorectal cancer screening test, um, there's not much we can do beyond diagnosing which individuals need to go to colonoscopy and which don't. That's just kind of an FDA regulation problem. But I think we have so much more to offer in the inflammatory space.
Mm.
So, like you're describing, the current paradigm for individuals with IBD is you have GI symptoms and you go to your doctor, and it can take months or years to get a diagnosis. And then it can take many more months and many more years and many trials on different medications to actually go into remission for patients with IBD. So I think for those individuals, we can provide much more information using our transcript analysis. And that could include not just diagnosing disease, but predicting prognosis. Is it going to be really bad? Is it not going to be that bad? Is it just something that you can avoid certain foods? Is it something you can treat with a low level of treatment, like around a steroids, and maybe it'll go into remission? Or do you need a biologic, and which type of biologic could you use? We could predict therapeutic response and then monitor that mucosal healing over time. So I think with colorectal cancer, we kind of have a definitive positive, negative, go get a colonoscopy, don't get a colonoscopy. But in autoimmune and inflammatory diseases, there's much more we can do for those patients.
Do you think that you'd be able to predict or identify the triggers that cause the inflammation?
Yeah. And I think, what you're kind of describing, you're just describing the range of GI diseases. Individuals that have celiac disease, the triggers gluten, right? So that's another area where we're looking at and trying to help patients with, food allergies or response to certain foods or insults to their GI tract that can cause gastritis. So that's again another thing that we're working on actively, and hopefully we'll have solutions for individuals that have those problems as well.
And I'm just trying to understand, because so you said that you can also tell like, hey, maybe some predictive models around which treatment would work best. Is that because there's different what's that RNA showing you that says, hey, this is what would actually fix me?
Yeah, so I think people talk about inflammation like it's one disease. And similarly, people talk about cancer like it's one disease. Cancer is hundreds of different diseases. Inflammation is different. There's a number of different pathways that can cause inflammation that result in the same problem, GI distress. But is it mediated by T cells? Is it mediated by B cells? Is it mediated by neutrophils or natural killer cells? Is it just leaky gut? Is it food problems? And your body's responding to that. So there are a number of different pathways that can cause inflammation, and that would dictate which treatment would be most appropriate for an individual. And that's what we hope to be able to ultimately detect for those individuals is what is the pathway that is dysregulated and causing the problem, causing the inflammation, and what is the best treatment for that individual.
When you talk about those different pathways, what are the causes of them? Like you said, just there could be something from our food, but are other people just have these things naturally occurring because of an underlying illness or something?
Yeah, and so that, your body is constantly being exposed to pathogens, right? It could be a virus, it could be bacteria, it could be, food that you're responding to, it could be, something that you drink. If you have Mountain Dew, your body doesn't like it, it's responding. But there's also, the flip side of that is autoimmune diseases. So your body sees something that most people would be very benign, but your body starts freaking out and causing inflammation. And that is what happens in conditions that are autoimmune. Your body starts kind of attacking itself, even though there's no reason to. And it's the same process, right? Your body thinks that there's a problem and it's attacking the thing that they think is a problem, but it's actually not. So that's one of the pathways that we're trying to address. And specifically for patients with IBD, when they have this autoimmune response to their gut, we're trying to tampen down the inflammation and prevent them from having symptoms.
What research goes into like actually finding out what would better treat, whether it be inflammation or even cancer itself? I know that's not really what you guys are doing, but
Yeah.
maybe you can shed light on why is it so hard, I guess, for us to identify, hey, this is, what cancer is, this is how we could treat it better. Or is it because, like you said, there's so many different types and I guess enlighten me on that.
It's definitely the second one. Again, I think people say, why can't we cure cancer? Well, we've
Mhm.
cured a lot of cancers, right? There are some cancers where you take a drug and it goes away. There are some cancers, melanoma, if it's small enough, we can cut it out, that you're cured. There are some cancers that we're really bad at. Pancreatic cancer often presents late stage. There's often underlying pathology. The mutations that are present are very difficult to treat. It's very difficult to access, so surgical options are not great. And again, it's presented in late stage because it's asymptomatic. So there are some cancers we're very good at treating. We can actually cure. There are a lot of patients that are survivors that never have to. They constantly are worried about it, I'm sure, but they never develop cancer again for the rest of their life. And I think it's the same for us, where we're trying to access those biomarkers and we're trying to annotate those biomarkers as effectively as possible so that we can dictate what is the best treatment that could be curative for those individuals.
What do you hope is yours and Geneoscopy's legacy at the end of this?
That's a great question. I like building things, I'll say. This has been an amazing adventure to go from I came up with an idea at the kitchen table with my dad, when I was 24 years old, all the way to now the FDA is reading a 14,000 page document to describe a test that we created. So I think, you know, building something that is very valuable to patients is very important to me. And even if it, you know, saves lives, even a couple lives, I'll feel like I did my job. And I'm just constantly thinking about that woman in the hospital, that, maybe she would have gotten a colonoscopy if our test was
Mm.
positive. And so that kind of is what drives me. And the legacy that I want to leave is helping someone.
How much of your team is made up of like the science side versus the business side at this point? Is like, and if I know you guys are in uh growth mode, but so
Yeah.
if someone wants to come work with poop, is it going to be on the science side, or is it, what kind of things do you guys do?
I think for the past couple of years, it's been a lot of push on the science side. I said we have an amazing team and we're all nerds. There's so much Star Wars paraphernalia around the office, a lot of Lord of the Rings. There's a Zelda book on the desk right there. So I'd say that we have a lot of science. Um, but I think as we push this product towards commercialization, we've started building out our commercial team and building out a group of people that can, like you were describing, educate physicians, educate patients about our test and what we can offer. So I'd say right now it's maybe half half. but I'm always team science for sure.
What do you guys look for? Is it just someone that's, kind of passionate about the mission, or when you're thinking about the team, especially on the science side, I'll let you talk about that.
Sure. I think that most startups have so much to do that they don't really focus on human resources, and the people, and what is our mission, what is our culture. I think Andrew and I both came from industries where culture was really bad.
Mm.
In healthcare, the culture can be pretty rough. There's a hierarchy. There's a do what I said because I said it. Don't ask questions. I'm your boss. I think Andrew, came from investment banking, finance. It's a very similar field where you kind of just keep your head down and get your work done. And there's a lot of burnout.
Right.
And so I think because we had that lens and that perspective in our previous occupations, we kind of came to Geneoscopy with the goal that culture would be at the front. And it was one of the first things that we started working on when we started the company and tried to understand who do we want to hire. What are the values that we want to hire. And so what I would say is we have a team that is empowered. We have a team that's creative. We have a culture that's very open and transparent. We like to collaborate across different fields. I like to hear from everybody. This morning, I was, in the pits working with the CLSs, the clinical laboratory scientists. Not because I have to, but because I think that's where you get the best ideas and you get a feel for what's happening in the lab. So, and it's fun. It's just a really fun team to work with. So I think when you think about who do we want to hire, what do we want to hire, it's just, passionate people that enjoy their job and want to be a part of something special.
Well, I mean, I think the team's going to be important for you guys. You guys are literally changing the world, hopefully. So, but what's one thing I think that you'd offer good insight on this? I like to give people like a takeaway that they can apply to their life. And you're somebody that's in a short amount of time done a lot of different things. So, what's one piece of advice or one takeaway that someone should say, they can apply today to what they're going through or what they're doing?
I There's a couple. One that's coming to mind that I always tell people is always take the meeting. I often get asked, do you have 30 minutes to go over my resume, or do you have 30 minutes to help me with my business pitch, or can you come speak at this panel? And I often, my gut instinct is I'm a little busy. I have a kid at home. I've got a company. I got to do school, things like that. But then I kind of think about it and I say, I should go. I should do it. I should help. I should give back as much as I can. And the example of that is there was one meeting where an individual said, can you come speak at, come for this roundtable thing? It's about entrepreneurs and we'd like you to be there. And I said, fine, I'll do it. And I got there a little early and I was working and, wasn't expecting anything. And I looked up and Mark Zuckerberg walked into the room and he
Wow.
was giving his roundtable. I think he was going across the country and meeting entrepreneurs in different cities. And, I look back and I think if I hadn't have said yes, because I was too busy, I wouldn't have gotten that opportunity. So, no other meeting since has that ever happened to me. But I think about that when I feel like I'm too busy to take the meeting. So always take the meeting is what I will say.
How do you balance, and I'll let you go, but how do you balance, the lifestyle of, hey, I got a young kid, I'm a startup, and how do you find balance for all that? Like you said, I want to take these opportunities and I'm trying to grow a business, but I also have other priorities.
Every day I try to think about, what I want to do and prioritize my day, and think about what I have to do versus, what is optional. I
Mm.
have to take care of my kid. I have to be home at 4:45 every day to pick them up. I have to advance the milestones at the company. So I kind of reprioritize every morning and try to stay organized and on top of things. But there are days where I'm not gonna make it. I'm not gonna be as productive as I want to be. And I just let myself have that space and have that time. And I would advise other people to do the same and, recognize your limitations. And I think when I'm able to take care of myself and take care of my mental health and my personal health, and then I'm kind of the best person that I can be and get a lot done. So on days where you just kind of don't feel like it and you wake up on the wrong side of the bed, I would implore you to give yourself some space and some time and just get a couple of things done and don't hold yourself too accountable.
No, I think that's a powerful message. I appreciate you sharing that. I'll put the links to the business and everything in the show notes, but what's the best way for people to follow you and kind of see what you're doing and follow the story as you guys keep advancing?
Yeah, I think we have a really great presence on pretty much all the social media platforms. So it's Geneoscopy, www.geneoscopy.com. And we have a lot of publications coming out in the very near future. We'll probably have our new test approved very shortly. And then we're going to start helping people with other diseases. So, stay tuned there to see what we're developing and what we have to offer coming in.
All right, Erica. Well, I can't thank you enough. I think this was amazing, and I hope that people get something out of this because it's big and it's an important thing that you guys are doing. So I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much.